So, good afternoon, everyone. We are assigned to discuss the chapter 12, which is determining cost, budget, and earned value risk identification project closing. But before we begin, these are the following key points or areas that we are going to converse about today. So, first, we have estimating the cost of activities, determining a time phased baseline budget, determining the earned value of the work performed, analyzing cost performance, forecasting project cost at completion, controlling project cost, and managing cash flow. So first, we have estimate activity cost. So here, during the planning phase of the project, specific activities are defined and a network plan is created. So once specific activities are defined, then estimates can be made of resources, durations, and cost for each specific activity. So basically, estimating activity cost helps project managers to determine not only the financial capacity, but also the resources required to complete a project successfully. So it helps them to develop realistic budgets, plan and control the project, and make informed decisions, and also most importantly, communicate effectively with the stakeholders. Next, we have the elements of estimated cost. So it consists of 7 elements. So first we have the labor cost. So these are the estimated costs for the various types or classifications of people who are expected to work on the project, such as painters, designers, and computer programmers. So of course, from the word itself, labor and cost, this make reference to the expenses associated with the workforce required to complete a project. So by carefully monitoring and controlling labor costs throughout the project managers can easily or can ensure that the project is completed on time and within budget while still achieving the desired level of quality and meeting the needs of stakeholders. Second, we have the material costs. So these are the costs the project team or contractor needs to purchase for the project, such as paint, lumber, piping, carpeting, electrical cable, paper art, supplies, food, computers, and application software. So that is very clear and very understandable, but we should also consider accurate estimate of material cost to develop a realistic project budget and ensuring that the project is completed on time and within budget. Overestimating material costs can result in a budget that is too high, while underestimating material costs can lead to cost overruns and delays. Third, we have the equipment costs, which includes which includes computers or machinery, facilities cost, which includes special facilities or additional space for the project. So basically, here, project managers must also consider a variety of factors, including the cost of renting a facility, the cost of utilities, the electricity, the water, the gas, the internet, and also the cost of maintaining the facility and equipment. Fifth, we have the subcontractor and consultant costs. So if contractors did not have the expertise or resources to do certain project tasks, they may outsource some activities to contractors or consultants to perform those activities. So when contractors can encounter projects that are beyond their expertise or resources, they may choose to either subcontract or outsource those tasks to external contractors or consultants who specialize in those areas. So by doing that, contractors can ensure that the project is completed to the required standards and on time without compromising on quality or incurring excessive costs. However, when you outsourcing work to contractors or consultants can also have cost implications. So the cost of subcontractors or consultants may be higher than if the work were performed by the contractor's own team, and additional costs may also be incurred in, let's say, for example, managing the work of multiple parties. So therefore, it is very important that contractors must carefully kind of evaluate the cost first and also the benefits of subcontracting or outsourcing work to ensure that it is a cost-effective solution for the project. Next element would be the travel cost. So if the project is in a distance, the cost of travel, airfare, sorry, lodging, and meals. So here, it is also kind of very understandable. So basically, this refers to the expenses associated with travel required for a project. Lastly, we have the reserve cost. So this means the estimated amount rather for contingencies to cover unexpected situations. So we know that in every project there is always a reserve cost, which means money that is set aside in the project budget to cover if ever another is unexpected kanang events or situations arise during the project's execution. So contingencies can include kanang a range of unforeseen events like kanang mga delays, equipment failures, natural disasters, or even unexpected changes in the project scope or requirements. So by allocating a portion of money or a project budget to cover contingencies, project managers can be able to minimize the risk of cost overruns and delays and ensure that the project stays on track. So next we have determine project budget. So basically in in project management, determining project is very critical as it provides a roadmap of the project. It also helps to manage resources effectively. It also manages risks, facilitates communication with stakeholders, and most importantly, enables effective monitoring and control of the whole project or the entire project. So, in determining project budget, it involves two steps. First, we have the total budgeted cost, which means the aggregate amount of the estimated cost of all the specific activities to perform and complete a work package or the project. Second, we have the time phase budget, which is the distribution by time period of the total budgeted cost for a work package or project over its expected time span based on when specific activities are scheduled to be performed. We also have this aggregate total budgeted cost, which also referred to as budget at completion or BAC. So here, the aggregate total budgeted cost serves as the baseline for monitoring and controlling project costs throughout the project's execution. So project managers use this baseline to track projects' expenditures and compare them to the estimated cost. So any deviation from the budgeted cost requires corrective action to be taken to ensure that the project stays on track and on time. So this helps ensure that the project is completed within budget and to the required quality standards. Develop cumulative budgeted cost. So here it involves breaking down the project into smaller components or work packages and estimating the cost of each component. So the cost estimates are then aggregated to arrive at the total budgeted cost for the project. So basically, this process is repetitive and the estimates are refined as more information becomes available during the project's execution. So once the cumulative project or once the cumulative cost rather has been developed, so it will be used as the baseline for monitoring and controlling project cost, and it will be easier for the project managers to compare actual project cost to the budgeted cost and also taking corrective actions if necessary to keep the project on time and on track. So for the next topic, which will be discussed by Ate Iza.
Today I'll be discussing about my part of the report in chapter 12. So 1 second while I open my report. Uh, So I'll be discussing about determining actual cost. So an actual cost, it's to keep track of actual costs. You need to establish a system to collect um or gather data. So an accounting structure should be established based on the work breakdown structure numbering system so that each item of actual cost can be charged to the appropriate package. So let's consider an example of a manufacturing company that produces widgets. So to determine the actual cost of producing each widget, the company needs to take into account all the costs associated with production, including direct cost and indirect cost. So let's say in an Excel file, business owners are always are encouraged to keep track of their inventory so that it can help them in determining their actual cost or profit. Next, also a weekly timesheet. So the number of labor hours worked in each work package using a project number. So let's say for an employee, this certain employee entered into the work at 8 a.m. and ended at 5 p.m. Usually, companies would use biometrics for this, or the time in and time out, or clock in and clock out system the company has established. So another way of determining actual cost is invoices, receipts for materials, equipment. So this is what I mentioned earlier, that business owners are encouraged to keep track of their inventory and cost. Next, committed costs. So these are funds that have been obligated for an item that has been ordered or purchased but not yet paid for and therefore are not available to be spent elsewhere. So referred to as commitments, obligated costs, or encumbered costs. So committed costs are expenses that a business organization has already obligated to pay, in short, in the future due to a contractual agreement or other legally binding commitment. So these costs are typically fixed and cannot be avoided or reduced without incurring penalties or breaching the contract. So in short, it's like fixed cost. So an example of committed costs could be list of payments, rentals, loan repayments, insurance premiums, salaries and benefits, maintenance, electric bills. These are all under committed cost. So committed when an item is ordered through a PO, purchase order, and payment may take place some later time. So to permit a realistic comparison of actual cost to CBC, portions of the committed amount should be assigned to actual cost while the work is being performed. Next, comparing actual cost to budgeted cost. So actual costs, data are collected on actual costs, including the portions of any committed cost. So they need to be summed by work packages so that they can be compared to the CBC for the work package. While cumulative actual cost, also referred to as the actual cost of work performed, is the amount of cost actually expanded and committed to accomplish all the work performed up to a specific point in time. So actual cost refers to the actual amount of money spent on a particular project, task, or business activity, while budgeted cost refers to the estimated amount of money that was planned or budgeted to be spent on the same project, task, or business activity. So comparing actual cost to budgeted cost involves comparing the actual amount spent to the planned or budgeted amount. So in order to identify any variances of or differences between the two, if the actual cost is lower than the budgeted cost, it is considered to be under budget, while if the actual cost is higher than the budgeted cost, it is considered to be over the budget. Next, determine value of work performed. So the fact that half of the budget was actually expended does not necessarily mean that half of the work was performed. So if the work performed is not um, kept up with the actual cost, there is trouble. Conflict, even if the actual cost is earned value in line with the CBC. So, determined value of work performed, also known as earned value of work performed, is a measure of the value of work that has been completed on a project at a specific point of time. I'm sorry. It is used in project management to track project progress and compare it to the project budget and schedule. So an example of how to calculate the supposed determined value of work performed. So suppose a construction project has a budget of 500,000 pesos and a schedule of 6 months to complete. At the end of the first 2 months, the project team has completed 40% of the planned work, which was to install the foundation and framing for the building. So the total cost of the planned work was estimated to be 300,000 pesos. So to determine the value of the work that has been completed, the project team uses the determined value of work performed formula. This is also referred to as the budgeted cost of work performed, which is the value of the work actually performed. So this is also a key parameter that must be determined throughout the project. Next, cumulative earned value or CEV. So once the percent complete data have been collected, the earned value must be actually performed up to a specific point in time. It is calculated by multiplying the TBC, the budgeted cost, by the percentage of the work estimated to complete. So it is also a measure of the total value of the work that has been completed on a project up to a certain point in time. So from the word cumulative, so dugang-dugang, it is calculated by adding up, as mentioned, determined the EV for each reporting period from the start of the project until the current reporting period. So example, painting 10 rooms for $2,000 or pesos. If 3 rooms were completed, it is safe to say that 30% of the work has been performed. So the CEV is 0.30 because 30% then move the decimal places to make it a number. 0.30 times 2,000 equals 600. So the CEV can be used to assess the overall progress of the project, compare it to the project budget and schedule, and forecast the expected final cost and completion date. So my part ends here. Thank you.
Hi, this is Violeta Cando Sumayang. So right now, I'm gonna be discussing about the analyzed cost performance. So these 4 cost-related measures are used to analyze project cost performance, which is the TBC, CBC, CAC, CEV. So this has been already discussed by Ms. Chong earlier. So TBC stands for total budgeted cost. CBC is a cumulative budgeted cost. CAC is a cumulative actual cost. CEV is a cumulative earned value. So in here, most likely we are in terms with analyzation of the cost performance. These are the one that we use whenever the project is being performed within the budget and whether the value of the work performed is in line. So with the actual cost. So, for example, we have this 64,000. Let's just have it in a peso sign since we're in the Philippines. So, 64,000 was budgeted through the end of week 8 to perform all the work scheduled to be performed during the first 8 weeks. Next is we have another 68,000 pesos was actually expended by the end of week 8. And then there is this 54,000 was the earned value of work actually performed by the end of the week 8. So a quick analysis indicates that the actual cost is exceeding the budget cost. So aggravating the situation further is the fact that the value of the work performed is not keeping up with the actual cost. So that was based on the example that was given in here. So with the 64 as the budgeted, as the 68 as its actual expenses to be exact, then 54 is the actually performed. So in here we have a graph. So this is an example of a bar graph. So it's just more likely the percentage of the packaging. It's really the idea to plot a CBC, CAC, and a CEV curves in the same graph. So as shown in this figure, it's more likely we could say that at the end of week 8, 64% of the total budget for the project have been spent to perform all the work, so scheduled to be performed for the first 8 weeks. And 68, which is the percentage of the actual expenses or the actually spent, is the it was the percentage in which there is an actually expended by the end of the week 8. Second is the 54% of work completed, so it's most likely the total project work by the end of the week 8. So in addition to plotting the pesos values of CVC, CAC, and CEV curves on the same graph, it may be useful to tabulate, since the draw of the chords of each percentage is more likely indicate any trends towards improving or deteriorating cost performance. We are into analyzation of the cost performance in here, so more likely it would be better if we could present graphs like this. So that would be best example for it. So let's go with the cost performance index. So cost performance index is a measure of the cost efficiency with which the project is being performed. So it's more likely the formula in here, or the CPI, or the indicator of the cost performance. So we have a specific formula for this, so I'm gonna be showing it to you later on. Let's have this one. So as we can see, I have given you earlier the amount of like 54,000. We're talking about 1,000, and the 64,000 as the budgeted through the end. So the CPI, so it measures the cost efficiency which the project is being performed. So it's the cost performance index equals cumulative earned value, or the cumulative actual cost. So it's more likely CPI equals CEV over CAC. So in the example that was given in there, so it's more likely the packaging machine project. So it's 54,000 pesos divided by 68,000, which is 0.79. So this ratio indicates that for every 1 peso actually expended, only 0.79 or 0.79 of earned value was accomplished. So trends in the CPI should be watched carefully. Why? Because when we analyze a cost performance, we refer into what we have budget from what we have, or what we have the outcome is, or what we specifically have a finished project. So it's not, we are at loss if we have expended more budget, if we have some lot of expenses, than having what we have, or the finished product. So it would be like a best thing that our earned value should not, our actual cost should not pass through to what the budgeted cost is from our earned value. So next, we need to discuss about the cost variance. So another indicator of cost performance, the difference between the CEV of the work performed and the CAC. So it's also a formula. So just like this, it's just the difference between cost variance and the CPI, or the cost performance index. It was just being our CEV is divided into our CAC. While in here, our CV, or the cost variance, our CEV is subtracted into a CAC. Why? So this indicator shows that the gap between the value of the work performed and the actual cost but the cost variance is expressed in terms of pesos. So, in the packaging machine project, the CV of the week 8 is given by. So, we have 54,000 minus 68. So, we have an answer of negative 14,000. So, this calculation indicates that the value of the work performed through week 8 is 14,000 less than the amount actually expended. It is another indication that the work performed is not keeping pace with the actual cost. So, literally, we are at loss in here. So, to analyze cost performance, it is important that all the data collected be as current as possible and based on the same reporting period. For example, if the actual costs are collected for the 30th of each month, then the percent complete estimates for the work packages should also be based on work performance through the 30th of the month. So that should be, in keeping up the pace, we need to like match up on what specific date of the month we are having an actual cost with a percentage of estimates that we have. So next is we're still in the cost variance. So it would be possible to determine the forecasted cost of completion, or the FCAC, referred to as the estimated cost at completion, the EAC, for what the total cost will be at the completion of the project or work packages based on the actual cost expended. So yeah, let's look at this estimate cost at completion. So at any time during the project, it is possible to determine the forecasted cost at completion, also referred to as estimated cost of completion. So our FCA is also called as ECA though. So for what the total cost will be the completion of the project or work package based on the actual cost expended, the earned value of the work performed, and the remaining work to be done. There are several different methods for calculating the FCAC. So the first method assumes that the work to be performed on the remaining portion of the project or work package will be done at the same rate of efficiency as the work performed so far. So the formula of calculating is this one. The FCAC equals total budgeted cost divided by cost performance index. So it's the TBC minus our CPI. So for the packaging machine, we have the FCA equals 100,000 divided by 0.79, which is 126,582. So literally it's as we all know, we already have gotten our CPI of 0.79. So, and if the remainder of the project continues to be performed at the same efficiency rate, then the entire project will cost 126,582. So if this forecast is correct, there will be an overrun of 26,582 beyond the TBC for the project of 100,000. So, a second method of determining an FCAC assumes that regardless of deficiency rate the project or work package has experienced in the past, the work to be as the control cost of 260 or 260. Control cost of 260 is the analyzation cost performance on a regular and timely basis. So it's really the baseline of a time-based budget that shows how the costs are expected to be expended during the time span of the project. So it's more likely like the budgeted time allowance for the specific lifespan or time span of the project. So necessarily to monitor the actual cost expended and the EV of the work performed. So cost variances and inefficiencies be identified early so that the corrective action can be taken immediately before the situation goes or gets worse. So analyzing cost performance to determine which work packages may require correct action. deciding what specific corrective actions should be taken. So cost control involved this following though, these three lists that we have right there. And lastly, it should be the revising the project plan, including estimated duration and cost, to incorporate the plan corrective action. So it's more likely what we have to be able for our cost to be controlled, and there will be no worst that might happen on the project, so that the project can finish as what it was being expected. So my next discussion is all about managing cash flow or a managed cash flow. So it involves making sure that sufficient funds or payments are received from the customers in time, so that you have enough money to cover the cost of performing the project. Payroll, invoices or materials, invoices from subcontractors, and travel expenses. So managed cash flows, this talks about like the money that you cover for the cost of performing the project. Because when you do perform project, especially if it's a big project, I would also tell you that you are not the one who is working for it. There should be contractors that will gonna be working for you to be able for them, to be able for the project to be finished, to be what it was being planned. So the key to managing cash flow is to ensure that case comes in faster than it goes out. Yeah, that should be really in our thinking, that cash is not available to meet expenses, money must be borrowed. So next is cash coming from the customer can be controlled by the term of payment in the contract. So in the contract, when we do contract, there is really terms of agreement for it. You need to agree. It's licenses, it's policies and rules, because a project cannot be at cost if there is no money that will gonna flow on it. So literally, we needed money from it. So it is desirable to revive payments from the customer early in the project rather than late. Yeah, that's right though. So next is when we provide a down payment at the start of the project. Yes, we if a project is something that we need to have to buy some materials and supplies, when you need to go through and buy some things that the project is needing, there should be like a down payment for it to be able for it to be started. So yeah, as what you can see on the next thing, there is the purchase of materials, equipment, and supplies during the early stages of the project. So next is make equal monthly payments based on the expected duration of the project. Money talk is something that we are really having in mind, that without money or without cash, a project plan cannot be completed though. So it's really one of the important thing that we have, or when we talk about some budgeted costs. So next is provide frequent payments such as weekly or monthly payments rather than quarterly payments. I wanted to inform you why it is being emphasized as weekly or monthly, because when we do weekly, we only did not deal with the materials, the equipments that is used for a project. We also deal for some bases, like some categories in which we needed to have a finance with, like something let's see, with, for example, this business must need to have a permit, so we need to pay for some permits. The business is worked by a contractor, a subcontractor, so the one who's working, or the boss or the employer who's working on it, must need also the employer to pay to his employees or contractors for the payment. So it's more likely. So here's the thing, there is a worst scenario in here. if the customer prefers a one-time payment at the end of the completion of the project. Yeah, there are really, when we do manage our cash flows, there are really some time that a project can only be paid once it is done. So it's really based more on what you have agreed about during the time you have planned to create that project. So again, this is Violeta Cando Sumayang. This has been the discussion that I'm gonna be having for you today, and hope to see you soon. Stay safe, everybody, and I'm just gonna end it from here. So thank you for your time, guys, and have a great day. Bye bye.
Chapter 8, Managing Risk. Identify risk. So risk is an uncertain event that, if it occurs, can jeopardize accomplishing the project objective. So usually we can define risk as the future uncertainty about deviation from expected earnings or expected outcome, or for in short, risk is the potential situation or event to impact on achievement of specific objectives. So risk identification includes determining which risk may affect the project objective and what the impact of each risk might be if it occurs. So next slide. Here's how can you identify the risk, especially in technical, schedule, cost, human resource, and sponsor customer. So failure to meet customer performance requirements. New application for technology. So, possible mga cause of risk. Meet quality standards. For schedule is vendor delay in delivery of critical equipment or materials. Delay due to weather condition. So, weather condition usually bagyo, linog, ano yung mga cause of mga risk. Manpower factor ng mga tao. Dependent work from the previous. Cost, material cost escalate more than anticipated. Unexpected cost of rental of equipment. Human resource may not have enough manpower. So, itong ingon ganina, itong absent or nataktak. Then, sponsor or customer, delays in approval from customer. Okay, ni-approve sa customer nga yan dawato ng kuan. Sakto ba to yang kuan kanang gi-order or dugay or sa sponsor sad dugay na-approve. Security of sponsor funding, modification or change of mind. Conflict among sponsors or contractor sponsors. Here are some common project risks. First is the project purpose and need is not well defined. Second is project design and deliverable definition is incomplete. So, dili kompleto tanan sabi na sa mga deliverable. Project schedule is not clearly defined or understood. So, usually kanang kuan, tapos agin ni dapat mahuman ang project, wala man kasi nabot sila sa labi na sa stakeholders or sa mismo sa kanang project team member or project manager. No control over staff priorities. Consultant or contractor delays. Estimating and or scheduling errors. Like, nagkasip-sayop na ang mga kuan. Pag-estimate sa kanang due sa project. Like, sa materials nga o katong materials nga maabot, scheduled for next week maabot, then dili pa din maabot for next 2 weeks pa din. Unplanned work that must be accommodated. Lack of communication from usually ani sa karan ni stakeholders to project manager, walay updates si project manager sa stakeholders. Then ang team members sad walay update on sa ilang mga angay pang storya sa ilang nabuhat. Then kasagaran ni sad uban kanang sa kuan from kanang supplier sa mga materialis walay communication nga tarong ba, and causing of lack of clarity and confusion mo na makalibog siya. Pressure to arbitrarily reduce task duration or run tasks in parallel, which would increase risk of error. Scope creep. Scope creep, so in project management, it refers to changes, continuous, or uncontrolled growth in a project scope at any point after the project begins. This can occur when the scope of a project is not properly defined, documented, or controlled. It is generally considered as harmful in the project. Project conflict not resolved in a timely manner. Business case becomes obsolete and is undermined by external or internal changes. Delay in earlier project phases jeopardize ability to meet fixed date. For example, deli- delivery of just-in-time materials for conference or lunch date. Added workload or time requirements because of new direction, policy, or statute. So usually sa mga kuani, project manager or project member na kanang imbes mahuman na ta siya kay kuan on time yung trabaho, dapat ipadungag lang yung trabaho kay tungod kay nanay bagong palisiya sa or and eradicate customer testing leads to large post go live deficit list. Legal action delays or post project. Sabi na kanang kuan, nanumdok ka kuan kuan yung legal action delays or post project kaning nitabo sa kuan ay sa kaning post village wagin mahuman tungod kay paagi pa nila legal action sa kuan CPA kay kasuhan nila ang kuan ang kanang sa niga kuan ni mega wide mo rin niga trabaho ni kuan. Then na customer refuse to approve deliverables or milestone or delays approval, putting pressure on the project manager to work at risk. Theft of materials, intellectual property or equipment. Ay, nakinumdum ka ni. When the Shopwise is undergoing kuan pa kana ang construct pa ng Shopwise, nadugay na siya ang mga Shopwise tungod kay ang mga material niya usually mga kabilya, mga kuan kana pintal, ikawat sa mga kuan, trabahador. Wa kay baw ang kuan ang project manager to. Kawat sikreto, gitaga kay to sa liyo sa kuan sa Shopwise na may kuan dra. Kaya na pa-travel bitaw ka na dra. Then acts of God, for example, extreme weather, bagyo, lead to loss of resources, materials, premises, or etc. Kanang usually lead to loss of resources kanang mga ibang ship nga kuan, mga materialis nga mga mabtan sa bagyo dito sa laut, mga tagat hindi na ma-recover kailangan pa na i-set kuan as para pa-refund niya man order sa balik. Stakeholder action delays project. For more on the damage stakeholders can do, see our case studies of real-world projects that faced costs running into millions because of stakeholders' action. So, assess risk. Risk assessment involves determining the likelihood that a risk event will occur and the degree of impact the event will have on the project objective. So risk is the process to identify the potential hazard. Risk assessment is the process to identify the potential hazard and analyze what could happen if a hazard occurs. So it is risk is related to activities that are on critical paths. So how do you plan risk response? How do you plan? How do you plan risk? So it's a defined set of action to prevent or reduce the occurrence of the impact of risk or to implement if the risk event occurs. Involves developing an action plan to reduce the occurrence. Sige mo action plan. Pinang project manager mo. Yan gina-identify on sa mga kasagarang risk nga may tabo. Can be can be to avoid the risk, mitigate the risk, or accept the risk. Avoidance means to eliminate the risk by choosing a different course of action. Risk assessment matrix. Risk matrix is sometimes called kaning probability matrix. So, or impact matrix. This is an effective tool that can help the risk evaluation by focusing the probability of a potential risk. Risk assessment matrix can help you calculate the project risk quickly. It does this by identifying the things that could go wrong and weighing the potential damage. This makes it easy to prioritize problems. Action will be needed in order to keep a project on course and safe as well. So, the project manager should think about potential risks in order to avoid risk events from happening while managing uncertain sound challenging. There are more and more calculating risk tools that can help require a little effort in the part of the project. So, money ang assessment matrix. So, as you can see in the severity 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, there are 6 levels. Then, under the consequences are people, assets, environments, and reputation. Then, increasing likelihood. So, mo ni siya ang kuan. Kaning usually lighter colors are most commonly kuan siya acceptable part ni siya sa kuan sa risk. So, for example, ani no sa severity level 1. So, never heard on or before industry. So, acceptable na siya slightly injury, acceptable. Heard in the industry, acceptable sa siya. Then, has happened in the company or more than once per year. So kani kuan siya kanang kuan pa ni siya kanang mahog ni siya o kanang tolerable pa ni siya, tolerable kaning blue tolerable ni siya. Ya kaning kuan yellow mo na siya ang kuan mga manageable sa kuan kailangan na gid siya kuan mag-manage na gid siya nga risk like sa kani severity level 5 more than 3% damage massive effect massive impact ever heard on before the industry so manageable siya heard of in the industry manageable kaning red mo ni siya ang kuan kanang requires control dapat kontrolon gini siya ang risk ay lisod na daghan na mga matay daghan na mga kuan ang project delay kayo end up walay project may tabo sige cancel na sa kuan mga stakeholders na to. So the risk analysis is not something to take lightly. There so when an um, risk assessment matrix focuses a lot of chances and consequences as the main focus. But depending on the organization, we are talking about how can a project manager counter the vulnerability or speed of onset. So usually, how to use the sekarang mga tanong ba how to use the risk assessment matrix when the risk assessment process is complete. You can start to take data of the matrix. Any risk assessment matrix uses two axes, one that measures the likelihood and one measures the consequences. The result. Okay. Next is the monitor risk. Includes implementing risk response plans, tracking identified risks, identifying and analyzing new risks, and evaluating the risk response process. Involves regularly viewing the risk assessment matrix throughout the project. So, monitoring the risk is a step of risk management process where companies must measure the success of their strategies to improve. Organization must first understand risk, deploy a risk strategy, but also monitor its result to adapt if needed. This last step is what is meant by risk monitoring. So usually natin mutana what are the ways to monitor risk. So first, usually one start with the processes, assess the effectiveness of the processes, update the risk register, conduct reviews regularly and schedule meetings. Check the stakeholders are still comfortable with the risk profile. Be mindful of the budget and consider an external audit and risk register. So why do we monitor risk? So mo niya mo to ako na why do we monitor risk? We monitor risk because it provides organization with the means to ongoing basis determine the effectiveness of risk response, identify the risk impact changes to organizational information system and the environment in which those systems operate, and verify compliance. So how to monitor risk? Assessing whether or not the risk control action plan has achieved its goal of controlling risk can be done in several ways. Consult the workers or learners involved in the control, consult the management who administer the controls, check accident and incident reports to see how effective the controls has been. Check first aid reports to see what kind of treatment was undertaken for any accident that may have been occurred. Basically, check the condition of the controls if applicable. And that's all for the risk monitoring. managing risk topic.
Good afternoon once again. I am Kathleen Puno and I will discuss the last topic, which is all about closing the project. So, project closing is the final phase of a project where the project manager and team complete all the remaining activities to formally close the project. So, it involves like verifying that all project deliverables have been completed and all project documentation is up to date and organized. Also, a project stakeholders have been informed about the project's completion. So there are the list of deliverables. So first is the training or procedure manuals. It provides information and instructions on how to perform a particular task or use of particular product or service. Examples include employee onboarding manuals, user guides or software applications, and safety manuals for manufacturing or constructions industries. The second one is the drawings. So it is a visual representation of a product, service, or process. So examples include like architectural drawings, engineering, schematics, and technical illustrations. The third one is the flowcharts. So it is a visual representation of a process or systems showing the steps involved and their decision points along the way. Next is the equipment. In a project plan, it refers to a specific physical or tangible items that needs to be provided, installed, or manufactured to complete a project. Next is building software. It is a software applications or tools used to facilitate or support a particular process or task. Example for this is include a project management software, customer relationship management, CR or CRM systems, and financial software. Next is brochures. So it refers to the creation and development of a software tool that allows users to easily design and create brochures. And next is conference. It includes materials and resources related to a particular conference or event, like, for example, the keynote speeches and the panel discussions and white papers. And followed by reports. So it provides a summary or analysis of data information related to a particular project or process. And for videos, it is a visual materials used to educate, inform, or entertain an audience. So example is the training videos, marketing videos, and documentary style videos. Lastly is the data. So a quantitative or qualitative information used to support decision making or analysis. So include like marketing research data, financial data, and performance metrics. So now let's proceed to the process of closing the project involves various actions. So first is collecting and making final payments. So ensuring that all financial obligations related to a project are met, including paying vendors, contractors, and other stakeholders. So the action involved may be include reviewing invoices, confirming that all services and products have been delivered and agreed, and reconciling accounts to ensure all payments are accurate and complete. Second is recognizing and evaluating staff. So acknowledging the contributions of the project team members and evaluating their performance during the project. So the action involved may be like include con- like conducting performance reviews, providing feedback and coaching to our team members, and recognizing outstanding performance through bonuses or other recognition. So third one is the conducting a post-project evaluation. So this one assessing the success of the project and identifying areas for improvement in future projects. So the action involved maybe include analyzing project performance data, reviewing project documentation, and conducting surveys or interviews with stakeholders. Next is the documenting lesson learned. So capturing, documenting the knowledge and insights gained from the project, including what worked well and what could have been improved. So the action involved may be like creating a lessons learned document, holding a debriefing session with the project team, and documenting the best practices and recommendation for future use or future projects. Lastly is organizing and archiving project documents. So ensuring that all project documents and records are properly organized, stored, and archived for future references. So the actions involved may include developing a project archive plan. So creating an electronic or physical archive of project documents and ensuring that all stakeholders have access to the archive as needed. So by completing these actions, the project team can ensure that the project is closed effectively, all obligations are met, and the knowledge and insights gained from the project are captured and used to improve future projects. So now, let's proceed to customer feedback. So first is live chat. So if your business is driven by the website, so be it a product or service, getting them onto your site is only the first hurdle. So this one is a real-time messaging platform that allows customers to communicate with a business representatives. So through the business website. So it provides customers with immediate assistance and support, which can help increase customer satisfaction and loyalty. The second one is email outreach. So speaking of old-fashioned, let's talk email. So it was once the model of future communication, and yet each day it began to feel more like snail mail compared to chat and other more immediate means of engagement. So email outreach, it involves reaching out of customers through email to request feedback or address any concerns they may have. So while email may not be an immediate as other methods, it allows businesses to communicate with customers on a more personal level and can be an effective way to build customer relationships. So the third one is customer feedback surveys. So an even older method of getting customer feedback is the survey, and this is although still has a few tricks up its sleeves. So survey continue to be popular, especially online surveys. So these are questionnaires designed to gather feedback from customers about their experience with a business's products or like services. So these surveys can be conducted in person, over the phone, or online. So and can provide businesses with valuable insights into areas for improvement. The fourth one is the phone calls. So if it feels as if we're going backwards technologically, well, that's because the newest method isn't always the best. So phone calls it involves like calling customers directly to gather feedback or address concerns. So while it may not be an immediate as live chat, phone calls also can provide a customer with a more personal level of support and can help businesses establish strong relationship with their customer. So the last one is the customer suggestion box or boards. I mean, so suggestion box is in the corner of an office you've worked at. So a pad besides it and a slot to slip in your note with what you think could be improved in terms of office procedures. So this one is a physical or digital platforms where customers can submit suggestions or feedback about a business's products or service. They can be used to gather ideas for product or service improvement and can help also businesses determine their commitment to customer satisfaction. And now, the early project termination. So planning for a project requires a lot of decisions to be made on intuition and experience. There are times when shortcomings in the planning phase led to a disruption during the execution. There are times when targets of the project are not met. So no matter how unfortunate it might seem, when one notices early signs of failure, one should terminate the project immediately to prevent further loss of time and resources. So early project termination can occur when a project is ended before it is completed due to a variety of reasons. So it can happen due to a poor planning, poor executions on external factors that are beyond the control of the project team. So terminating a project early can have a negative impact on the organization's finances, so reputations and morale. So however, there are times when it may be necessary to do so in order to minimize further issues and redirect resources to other more promising reports or promising projects. So in order to minimize the risk of early project terminations, so careful planning and risk management strategies should implement during the planning phase. So these include identifying potential risks, developing contingency plans, and ensuring that the project goals and objectives are realistic and achievable. Next is when to terminate the project. So you can terminate the project if overrunning of expenses without meeting targets. So when a project costs more than anticipated and the expenses continue to rise without delivering the expected result, it may be time to consider terminating the project. Also, you can terminate the project if the competition is doing better. So if the competition is doing better in terms of offering a similar product or service, or if the market for the project is no longer viable, then the project may be need to be terminated. Also, the third one is project goes out of control. If the project starts to become unmanageable with unexpected issues arising, it may be time to consider termination to prevent further damage. And also, you can terminate the project if other pressing priorities come up. If there are other pressing priorities that require immediate attention, then the project may need to be terminated to free up resources. Also, failure upon repeated testing. So this one, if the project repeatedly fails testing or quality assurance checks, then it may be time to consider termination to avoid further investment in a project that is unlikely to succeed. And also unseen cause of danger. So this one, you can terminate the project also. So if the project poses unforeseen dangers, risk, or hazards, then it may be necessary to terminate the project, like to avoid potential harms. And lastly, we can terminate the project if cutting corners at the wrong places. So if the project teams cuts corners in the wrong places, such as skipping critical steps or processes, it may lead to unexpected problems and failures of the project. In that way, so terminating the project may be necessary to avoid further issues. So, and that's all. Thank you.